Okay. Hello, Keith. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
All good, all good. A little tired, but all good.
Thank you so much for finding the time to have this meeting with me this afternoon on Zoom. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you. We are online with Keith Breslauer, former chairman of St. John's Wood Synagogue, personal friend, member of the synagogue, and of course, managing partner of Patron Capital. And I thought it would be interesting to have a chat with Keith about a slightly different perspective on what's going on right now in the business world and how this is affecting the global economy, what is taking place. So I'm going to just begin by asking you, first of all, Keith, I hope you're keeping healthy and well, but just give me a little bit of an update how these past 3-4 weeks have been for you, specifically managing director of Patron Capital. It must be a crazy time. Give us an update.
Yeah, I think, well, what I do for my day job, for lack of a better term, is I'm responsible for a fund or a series of funds that invest in property and property businesses across Europe, and about half of our businesses are in the UK. So we are, to the extent that we've made investments and we have not sold them, they are directly impacted by COVID. And to the extent we haven't yet invested and we have the capital, that gives us plenty of opportunity potentially to invest. So trying to keep it short, let's say. I think it's at a very high level. We have not invested our sixth fund yet, although we've been open for a couple months. I've been a bit careful. That has a lot of money available to invest. And our two prior funds, which have done very well, still are sitting on investments that have been exposed by government, obviously by COVID, and obviously government reaction to COVID. So our pub business is closed. Our shopping centers in Spain are closed. Our hotel in Poland is closed. And all of our construction sites around Europe in different degrees are either delayed or closed for now or extended. So that's kind of an immediate snapshot of what's happening. And I think I spent my past 2 weeks trying to make sure that we keep everybody employed. So trying not to fire anybody. Oh, and our Power League business is closed as well, very importantly. And so all those businesses are closed. We're trying not to fire anyone at all in those businesses, and trying to navigate our way through some of this government assistance to see what actually could help us or not in this time. So
Wow.
that might be my day shot. So through all, I think we have probably indirectly about 1,000 or so employees in different businesses, and everybody's impacted with their families and their kids, and people have, responsibilities. So it's an enormous amount of stuff that is happening all at the same time. And no one really has a clear answer through on where this will, end. We have a view, and we've modeled that into our analysis. But in terms of what I've been doing the past 2 weeks is dealing with all those issues.
Wow, that's
hence why
crazy.
I look a little bit tired. Although I decided to try to grow a beard to look a little bit like you.
It's going to take more than a beard, Keith. It's going to take more than a beard, but good luck.
Exactly. I got to grow some more hair.
Tell me something. That's incredibly noble to hear that you have 1,000 employees and you're continuing to employ them at this time is inspirational. But I wondered if you have any tips or advice for self-employed people who run their own businesses, obviously smaller businesses as well. There is government support, but do you have any general advice or tips for those type of individuals?
Well, perhaps I'll give you a bit of more of an optimistic view or perspective as an overview, and in terms of how to think about the future. So we have modeled, or our assumptions essentially are a 3-month shutdown starting about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, followed by a 3-month come back to life and a slow ramp up, where by January of 2021, we're back to some degree of normality, although we think there'll be some degree of structural impairment in the economy, where there's small businesses that can't survive, et cetera. So we're assuming sort of a 3-month window, which probably ends end of May, started by early June, coming somewhat back to life. Then July gets better, August is a bit strange, and in September and so forth is better. So that's our base case, and that applies to everything we own. So everything we own is assuming comes June, we're back, we're alive again, and we're working. Now, I think the positive story is that there's a lot of things that are going to help influence that to go quicker or to reconfirm that period. One is testing, which is huge. Second is potentially vaccinations, and C is whether all the social distancing is actually working in terms of this famous curve, us being on the other side of the curve. And that's what's going on the past couple of days in Italy, and to some degree Spain is being at the peak, and seeing whether people truly go over that hump. I'm more bullish in the sense that I think that there's a lot of countries, particularly America, which is heavily focused on trying to get these testing kits out very, very quickly. I think the Brits are an amazing place in the sense that we had over, I think, 500,000 volunteered for the NHS when they asked for 250. We have all the car engineering companies now making ventilators. We've got Dyson making ventilators. So a lot of people have been rallying to the cause, and the show has been fantastic. I think we have over 70 volunteers to help. So the people have been rallying to the cause to kind of make this better, and I think it's going to be a lot quicker than people think. And the trick, of course, is not to let it get worse again if they start opening the doors. So that's the positive view. The negative view, or the concern, is that America is about 3 weeks ahead of behind us, and as unfortunately, their mortality starts to rise, and the amount of people who pass away increases. If it gets too big, it could have a dramatic impact on the American psyche. So you could see Trump and government start to go, unfortunately, to go against China, let's say, in some way. They want to blame China for their problems, and that could lead to someone passing or doing something exceptionally stupid in terms of government regulation and potentially world trade. Sure. So I think we're in a bit of a fragile space, but going back to your specific point, I think it's exceptionally hard as a small business. Most small businesses only have 2 months of cash flow. Most of our small companies only have 2 or 3 months of cash flow, if that. And if you're a sole proprietor, you may not have any income, and it's all about your savings. This is if you think about our own business, I'm a real estate guy. I'm supposed to look at real estate. I'm stuck in my house. So to me, it's much more about using this period of time to do a lot of homework, a lot of research on what you want to do as a business, a lot of market testing and understanding in terms of people, and reaching out to people as best as possible, because now is the time that actually most people that you try to call normal times, and they might not talk to you because they're traveling or they're busy, actually are desperate to have more calls. Right. So it just has a flavor. I'm on the phone now from 7, so I daven, I work out, I get on the phone. I'm on the phone from 7:30 in the morning, roughly, to 9 o'clock at night. Every hour I'm on another call, okay? Right. And I've spoken to all local partners, and even though they're stuck in their homes and they can't do anything and it's hard, they're spending this time doing that research and work. So if you could,
so in other words, planning for when things get better.
Yeah, you have to work on the assumption that things will get better, not if. And they will get better within 3 months. I think it's a conservative view. I think it might be better than that. And then figuring out how to position yourself in this world. And I think that's really the key thing I'll be doing now.
I know you have a lot of experience with shopping centers, and we know the last couple of years, retail has really been struggling generally. Obviously, this has been a major hit for retail on high street. Do you think it will take a long time for that to recover, or it will slow, and it will what's already a struggling market will struggle even more? What's your view on that?
So I don't have a lot of, I have owned a lot of shopping centers in the past. I don't only have 4 now out of our portfolio, but we have also 4,000 homes and 1,200 pubs and this and that. So the retail for us is actually a relatively low exposure. But to answer your question, what we would think it seems to be sustainable is food anchored retail, and where people have to go, or retail centers that, let's say, are in a middle class, a lower middle class neighborhood, and it's very hard to have an alternative, and or where the large component historically is what you call experiential living. The other retail, clothing anchored retail, fashion anchored retail, as I say, is really difficult. It's difficult in England for a couple of reasons. One, you have online shopping, which we'll get to in terms of COVID. Second is you have the rise of big brands, so they abandon the smaller locations, big point. And third, we have a thing in England called the CVA, which is a company voluntary arrangement, and that meant even if you had a long lease as a landlord from your tenant has a right to reset the leases if he gets 75% of his landlords to agree, which means if you're one of his crappier stores or more difficult stores, he will leave you. So that's what we had before COVID, right? So a lot of retail companies and shopping centers that were really in difficult straits, and they all became what they call experiential, which is things that to do with your family and your kids and food and all that. Well, COVID just wiped all that out and stopped all of it. And the other thing it did, which is perhaps scary, is that out in the UK, we have anywhere between a 25 and 35% penetration rate in internet. And no one really knows what the right number is, but it's a big number. In Europe, it's a much lower number. In Spain, it's a really low number. And therefore, the problem of COVID, in a sense, is not only has it shut centers for 3 months, it's actually convinced people to understand culturally how to use online shopping better. So while we probably had a 9-month window or 1-year window in the future, or even more in some of these markets, because of COVID and the need to get food, the logistics has ramped up quite dramatically, and online buying is ramped up, and that's going to hurt the centers even more.
Even Kosher Kingdom are home delivering now. a lot of industry have become much better at dealing with being online.
Well, let's use Kosher Kingdom as a great example. If Kosher Kingdom build a reasonably strong logistic delivery system and people get used to it, how many people are going to go to Kosher Kingdom again physically? Right. So that's, what's happening is that this shock is essentially forcing a lot of people to have a change of behavior a lot quicker than people expected. And that will be a negative impact. So I think if you ask me today, would I buy a shopping mall and at what price? I think that's a really tough question. We're not really sure.
Sure. Talking about change of behaviors, we've seen a lot of compassion in the world. We've seen a lot of kindness taking place. You spoke about Dyson, St. John's Wood synagogues up and down the countries, communal institutions. What way do you think the business world is going to change in terms of its compassion and kindness moving forward? And how might that change?
Well, what's not obvious to the general public is that for the past 2 years, there's been this march of a concept called ESG or CSR, or, ESG is environmental social governance and CSR is corporate social responsibility. And the march is being almost driven by investors and big pension plans who are saying, we want to see evidence in the corporate world of giving back. So the big focus point for a long time has been on the environmental. Everyone's worried about climate change and the dynamics of climate change. And it's morphed into a bit of the social impact side, which is how do you make a difference? So much so that I serve as a trustee on a couple of endowments, and those endowments have policies that say if certain companies don't have a high level of CSR or ESG compliance, we will not invest in them as a liquid stock. And Larry Fink at BlackRock, who controls probably the largest fund manager in the world, has made it a very public comment about this in terms of the responsibility of management. So there's been, before all the COVID stuff, there's been a big march. We at Patreon have been far, we've done, obviously we focus on ESG as well. We've been far more involved, as a lot of people know, in the S, or the social responsibility side of CSR. And we've been doing that, since I started the company 20 years ago, but it's become bigger in recent times. COVID has essentially accelerated in some degree that focus across most people. But I don't think people are thinking about that right now. People are thinking about how to survive. They're thinking about how to keep jobs. They're thinking about their staff. They're thinking about their workers. You're not really worried about whether a building is going to be green or not when you can't even get workers onto the site at this stage. So I think when the markets reopen and they stabilize a bit, and you can actually travel around in your car and do various things, clearly that will continue, right? So if you think about our CSR, we've now morphed it into our, not just in charity, but in our business side, and we've launched or working on a fund with Big Society Capital called Women in Safe Houses, or Safe Homes, or WISH. And we're trying to run around and buy homes which will be rented to charity providers who help battered women kind of live a better life, and also for ex-offender women. And that's kind of a key business initiative that we have. Won't make any money on it, but it's an important business that we want to do. Interestingly, COVID has accelerated domestic abuse, right? So is there an increasing need for our idea? Absolutely. Will we be able to raise the cap? I'm contributing a lot of personal money to the venture, but will we be able to raise a lot of capital for it? We're not sure. So I think there's a natural push that's been going on for a couple of years now, and I think that will continue with this COVID dynamic.
Tell me something, for an entrepreneur, what opportunity are you most excited about in the post-coronavirus world? What opportunities do you think are going to come to light in the next 12 to 18 months that are going to be very exciting?
Well, let me tell you what opportunities exist today. So the fundamental impact of COVID has been on what we call the public markets. So if you're a private investor and you own a piece of real estate and you have a long-term loan, you're worried about your tenants maybe going bust, et cetera. But if you're a public company and you own assets, your stocks have been decimated. So you look across all the public companies, whether it's their traded stocks or whether they're traded debt, how they borrow money in the public market, the average price impact on public companies in the real estate space in Britain, for example, are down anywhere between 30 and 50%. Okay? So their yields, their implied yields on their real estate using their stock prices are around 7 to 9%. This is against valuations of around 4 to 5. It's not obvious at all that 4 to 5, so it's obvious to me that 4 to 5 doesn't make sense, But the question is whether that spread is too wide and whether there's an opportunity to buy into that market. And related to that is all of the opportunities that are going to come from public markets or companies that have been impacted by a liquidity crisis or liquidity issues in which they need to raise money by selling assets, or they need to do something by selling assets. So anything in the next it's not even right now, but it'll be in a month or so, anything over the next 6 to 19 months in terms of to do with providing liquidity, or 6 to 12 months to people who need it and helping them sell it or helping other people buy it is really going to be the story. And that's what we're doing. I mean, our guys are working flat out across all the investment markets because there is this very significant opportunity potentially to invest. The challenge, of course, is how much opportunity really will there be? In other words, if the markets recover quite dramatically in 3 months, and you have a thing called the V-shaped recovery, a lot of people could say, well, we're going to hold out for 3 months if they can. So I think it's going to happen in more of a U-shaped, maybe even L-shaped recovery. Things are going to be a bit slower. And now that April 1st has passed, which is an important payment date, you're going to see the banks getting a bit crazier.
Sure.
Right? So, and the government's very focused on employment, but they don't really care about, and they care about small businesses, but that's about it. Everyone else is kind of in free fall. So that's one of the reasons why you see that these huge impacts in stocks. And that's one of the reasons, I mean, we're running about €1 billion in cash. So we're trying to figure out where is there an opportunity or not, what we see as a place to play.
Keith, I have one final question for you. You know, I can see in the background you've got lots of Sforim, lots of Jewish books. You're an Orthodox Jew, Shimshon Raphael Hirsch in your bookcase, and a previous chairman of the synagogue. To what extent would you say, you know, the world's completely changed? A month ago from now, this conversation would have been a ridiculous idea. Every synagogue, every business, every shop in the world is basically closed. The world is closed for business. To what extent is the coronavirus to you a reminder that however much we plan, however prepared we are, the Almighty runs the world? And how has this whole situation affected your own personal faith?
That's a very good question. So there's a sort of a short answer and a long answer. There's sort of the slightly short answer. The question I would ask is since Judaism, a large chunk of Judaism is about community, and Sir Rabbi Sacks's essays and all these different commentators have come up. The very interesting question about how whether electronically we have a community or not, and what does that mean? So, for example, I have a friend of mine's brother, unfortunately, passed away from COVID, and he had a funeral. And we had the Shiva last night, the first night of Shiva, and it was all done by WhatsApp because half the family has COVID, the other half doesn't have it, no one really knows, and for very important health reasons, you can't get everybody together. And I was listening to Rabbi Levi say Shema Yisrael, and then we was davening Marav, and everybody was listening in. I think there was, 50, 60, maybe more people on the call, and I was saying to myself, do I have to make a bit of an extra effort to have the concept of communal prayer, to have the kahila together. So I think there's a pretty negative impact on people's faith in some degree if this goes on a very long period of time, because a large chunk of our davening and our prayer is very much about peer pressure, peer involvement, and using that peer energy to kind of reach a higher level and reach God. I mean, that's an important dynamic of who we are. And so I think that's what I worry about. But I think the effort made by you and by all the Rabbanim in our shul and across the communities is massively important, because what it does, it connects people. And I think that from a faith perspective, does this take away my faith? Not really. Does it reinforce my faith? Not really. You know, in my view, Hashem basically has been the guiding. I've always sort of followed this path that I have these traits that I've been given by Hashem, and my job is to use them. And if I don't use them, I will fail. And if I do use them, I will be successful. And that's basically the deal. You know, and I might get nudged every now and then by my dad from Shemayim, and I might get a little word in my ear in a dream or something. But it's all about kind of moving forward and making that difference and changing the world. And I think we as Jews have a dramatic responsibility, and COVID doesn't affect that response. This is a momentary blip. This will be over in 3 months or in 4 months. Unfortunately, we have lost people close to us, our family members. It is a very, very scary time, and I'm not belittling it in any way. But at the end of all this, you know, we will survive and we will grow, and that's really what we're supposed to be about. And I think our mission as Jews, and I really believe this on a personal practice basis, and I have a little dagger with the Marines, as a lot of guys know I'm a big fan of, is my personal belief and system is that we have a responsibility as Jews in this world to make a difference and to lead the way. We are the light on nations. That's it. And if we don't serve that responsibility, we have failed. So I think this the reach that we're doing and the world of work that you're doing is crucial because it helps make sure that kind of that foundation of the community is active. Give you a simple example. My wife has volunteered for the shul.
I was about to say, you guys are leading us. You are the light to our community over many, many years, but specifically now, what Lauren is doing, leading the volunteering coordination, is just sensational.
Well, I mean, if you think about whether they're delivering food or they're calling people, I mean, Lauren has called, I think every Shabbos she calls, 30 or 40 people. I mean, we know all these people over the years, but how many times have we actually spoken to them? What's interesting is so in many ways, that has really helped, obviously, the community and helped reinforce dynamics. Once you get back together, I think it could be quite very, very powerful. So, these are difficult times. This is not, but I do see, I'm a believer. I've been through a lot of hell personally in my life, and I've also seen a lot of, unfortunately, some difficult things. The greatness of the people will survive. Very simple point. If Kovoy infects the Israeli armed forces, Israel has a very serious threat to its existence. It is that simple. If you have a country and you have a unit called Shmona Matayim, or the 8200 unit focusing on tech, what do you think you're doing right now with that unit in terms of testing kits, in terms of coronavirus? What do you think all those scientists are doing right now as their priority in terms of the country? So I am a believer that in many ways Israel might lead the way and might show the world some incredible new discoveries and powerful things that will help reduce this risk going forward. So I think I'm not afraid of the future. Actually, I think the future is bright, but the trick is surviving this period of time and using this period of time to kind of build resources and network and relationships and strength. So when we come out of all this, we're actually better off than we were going in.
Sure. Keith, it's been an amazing conversation. I've really enjoyed chatting to you. And I think that first Shabbat back in St. John's Wood is going to be an inspirational, powerful one. I've had so many people who told me they're not shul goers, but after this, they are going to become shul goers because they want to connect with our community and with people like you. So thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your inspiration and your messages, and also your very valuable advice for everyone. And I wish you and your business and your family and everyone continued success and only good health. Thanks so much.
Amen. And from your mouth to Hashem's ears, as we say.
Amen. Amen. All the best.
Bye-bye. You too.